Hi, so today's lesson is on the Pythagorean Theorem, and the Pythagorean Theorem has a certain formula for it. And the formula is c squared equals a squared plus b squared. Okay? When you have the Pythagorean Theorem, what you're going to have is you're going to have this triangle. And the triangle is always going to have a right angle. And that right angle is always worth 90 degrees. Remember that from the last lesson on angles. Okay, so what happens is these are called legs, and side A and side B, it doesn't really matter unless it states which side is which, okay? So you can flip-flop these if you need to, okay? But this side right here, this is the longest side out of all three sides, and it's slanted, and this is always going to be side C. Now this side is called the hypotenuse. So you can spell it hypotenuse, hypotenuse, okay? So whenever you find your answer, just remember C is always going to be the bigger answer. C is going to be bigger than B, C is going to be bigger than A, okay? Well, I'm going to tell you right now that A is going to equal 6 miles, okay? And let's say that B equals 8 miles, okay? So I'm going to replace where this says A equals 6 miles, I'm going to replace that 6 where that A is. And then I'm going to turn around and this says B equals 8 miles. I'm going to turn around and put 8 in place of where B is. Okay, so if you watched the last video on square roots and squares, then you'll know that 6 squared, this is the base number, this is the exponent. You're going to take your base number and you're going to write it this many times. And you're going to put a multiplication sign in between. So our answer is 6 times 6, which equals 36. I'm going to bring all this down here. C squared, we still don't know what C is, equals 36 plus, now what is 8 squared? That's your 8, your base number. Your exponent is 2. Take your base number 2 times and multiply it. So it's going to be 64. Okay, so I'm going to bring C squared down here. And what's 36 plus 64? And that adds up to 100. Now, once you're to this point, you only have one more step left. Okay, so how you're going to handle this? You're going to X out the 2. You're going to draw your square root symbol around the 100, and now it says C equals, what is the square root of 100? And remember, when you're trying to find the square root, it's one number times that same number would equal what's in this square root signal. Okay, so C is going to equal 10. And we got to make sure we look at our little bit here. It's miles. We have to make sure we put that on there as well. So your answer is 10 miles. And if you notice, this 10, since it's C, it's bigger than 8 and it's bigger than 6. Okay, we're going to try another one. And we're going to go with the numbers 3, A equals 3 inches, and B equals 4 inches. And now we still don't know what C is though, okay? All right, so we're going to write C squared, and it says A squared. So we're going to fill in that 3 where the A is, so 3 squared, plus B squared is going to be 4 squared now. Now what is 3 squared? 3 times 3 equals 9. And 4 squared equals how much? Well, it's 16. Okay, our last couple steps, C squared equals, what's 9 plus 16? Well, that's 25. One more step. We're going to cross out the 2 and draw our square root symbol around the 25, and we're going to say, well, what is the square root of 25? So that's going to be C equals 5. So C equals 5 what? 5 inches. And as you notice again, 5 for C is bigger than 4 and it's bigger than 3. One more of this type of problem. Now, your triangle can be turned upside down, it can be turned sideways, it can be turned backwards. That's fine. It really doesn't make a difference as long as you know that this side is C right here and A and B can change unless it's otherwise stated. Now, we're going to look at what if A is 9 yards and B equals 12 yards? Well, C squared equals, what is A going to be replaced with? It's going to be replaced with the 9. And the B is going to be replaced with the 12. Okay, so C squared equals, what's 9 squared? That should be 81. Plus 12 squared equals 144. Now, we want to go ahead and add up the 81 and the 144. And you end up with 225. Okay, this is our last step. C squared equals 225. So what's the next step we're going to do? Well, we're going to cross out the 2. We're going to draw our square root symbol around the 225. What is the square root of 225? What times the same number equals 225? And that's going to end up being C equals 15. 15 what? 15 yards. Now, there's going to be some times where you have the answer for C, but maybe you don't know the answer to A, or maybe you don't know the answer to B. What they're going to do is they're going to give you 2 of the answers, but the third one is going to remain a clue, okay? So, let's take a look at it that way. We always keep the same formula though. Okay. What if we was to say, well, C is going to equal 5. And let's say, for instance, that B is going to equal 4, and this is going to be feet, but we don't know what A is. So we're going to plug in the numbers just like we did before. Now, C, we know, is 5. So we're going to put 5 squared equals, we don't know what A is, so we're going to bring that A squared down, plus B squared, we know that B is 4, so plug that in. All right, what is 5 squared? 5 times 5 is 25 equals, still don't know what A squared is, plus what's 4 squared? Well, 4 times 4 is 16. Now I'm going to bring this up here, erase this part. Remember, we're dealing with feet here. So 25 equals A squared plus 16. Okay. Right now, we need to, it's a little bit of algebra going on here, but we want to get this letter all by itself. So we need to get this 16 out of there. We need to bring this to the other side. And you can either think of it as just some subtraction right now, if you don't know your integers, your positive and negative numbers, or if you do know your positive and negative numbers, you can think of 16 as right now a positive 16. We bring it over here and we're going to make it into a negative 16. Or like I said, you can think of it as subtraction just for now. What is 25 minus 16? Well, that's going to be 9. And then now we have A all by itself. Now this is turned a little bit backwards, but it's still okay. What was the last step we're going to do? We're going to draw an X through the 2, and we're going to draw that square root symbol around the 9. So A is going to equal, the square root of 9 is 3. And don't forget, we were talking about feet. Now, if you remember the original part of the problem, C equaled 5. Well, 5 is more than 3, and B equaled 4, and B is still less than 5. So we've got it right. All right, let's do another one. Okay, I'm going to turn this one upside down. And what if I say that C is going to equal 10 inches? And I'm going to tell you that A is going to equal 8 inches. Okay? But we don't know what B is. All right, so let's start putting this into the formula. C equals 10. I'm going to put that 10 in where that C is. We now know that A equals 8. And this time, we don't know what B equals. So 10 squared is going to equal what? Well, that's going to be 100. Equals 8 squared. Remember, this is your base number. This is your exponent. You're going to write your base number that many times. 8 times 8, which is 64. Now, 64 plus, we don't know what B squared is. All right, so we want to get B by itself this time. We want to kick this 64 over to the other side, and we're going to subtract it from the 100. That means 100 minus 64 is 36. So 36 equals, well now we've got rid of that, we've got B squared left. Okay, still it's turned around backwards, but what's the next step that we do? We're going to cross out that 2, and we're going to draw the square root symbol around the 36. All right, so what does B equal? What's the square root of 36? Well, that makes B equals 6 inches. Okay? And if you look at it, C is still larger than B, and it's larger than A. All right. Now we're going to do one of ours with pictures, because a lot of students seem to have a hard time with pictures. All right. So let's say, for instance, that we have a big board right here. It's a big sign, okay, and down below, we're going to have a ladder that's leaning up against the sign. Now, here's the ground right here, okay, and it says here that this side is 3 feet, and this side is going to be 4 feet. And this is height right here. Now this is from the ground, and our ladder is going to be the slanty side. So which letter do you think that we're going to apply to this slanty side? This is going to be the longest side, which would be C. All right, so we don't know what side C is. Okay? Now, all we got to do is apply either A or B. So I'm going to say this is A, this is B, and we're just going to put it back into the formula like it was before. So C squared equals A squared is 4 squared plus B squared is going to be 3 squared. Okay, C squared equals 4 squared equals 16. 3 squared equals 9. And once you add 16 and 9 together, you end up with C squared equals 25. The last step, cross out that 2, draw your square root symbol around the 25, and that means C equals 5. 5 what? 5 feet. Okay. Couple more of these kind of problems. Well, it says here that in our word problem, it says Joyce made a flower display in the front of her store. Now, the display is in the shape of a right triangle. So there's our right triangle. And it says here that one side is going to measure 5 feet. So I'm going to put it down here, 5 feet. And it says the second side is going to measure 12 feet. Now, it does not say anything about the hypotenuse yet. It just says 5 feet on this side, 12 feet on this side. The last question is, how long is the side that's opposite of the right angle? Well, here's our right angle, so this one that's opposite would be, well, that's the hypotenuse. And they're wanting to know the answer for side C. So let's go ahead and plug these answers in. I'm going to say this is A, this is B, because it did not specify. Well, A squared is going to equal 5 squared. B squared is going to equal 12 squared. Okay, so what is 5 squared? Well, that's 25. What's 12 squared? Well, that's 12 times 12 is 144. You're going to add up 25 and 144. So your answer should be C squared equals 169. One more step. So we cross out the 2. We draw the square root sign around the 169. So C equals 13. 13 what? 13 feet. Okay, one more. Okay, we have a rectangle here, and that rectangle is divided in half. Okay, so this is the diagonal side, of course. So would that be side A, B, or C? Well, knowing that it's the longest side and it does slant, we know this has to be C. Now, if I tell you that, here's the word problem, a rectangle is a 4-sided figure with 4 right angles. Well, here's one, there's another one, and another one. Well, the diagonal divides a rectangle into the 2 right triangles, okay? So it asks, what is the length of the diagonal in the rectangle below if one side equals 6 inches, the other side equals 8 inches, okay? We're going to apply A over here, B over here, and we're going to put it into the formula. We don't know what C squared equals. A squared is going to equal 6 squared plus B equals 8 squared. Now, what's the square root of 6? Well, it should be 36. What is the square root of 8? That's 64. And if you add 36 plus 64, what do you get? Well, you should get C squared equals 100. What is that last step we're going to do? Well, we're going to X out the 2, draw the square root symbol around the 100, and now C equals how much? Your answer should be 10 inches. 10 inches. And remember, 10 for side C happens to be more than A or B. So remember, when you have this kind of problem with Pythagorean theorem, you could probably get rid of half of your answers just by knowing that C is always larger than A or B. And that's it for the Pythagorean theorem today. Goodbye.